What's going on, guys? Connor Wells here. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. In this video, we are talking podcasting, more specifically, podcast distribution. Let's roll the intro. So welcome back, guys. Like I said in the intro, we are talking podcast distribution today. Starting a podcast is something I highly recommend for every creative, photographer, videographer, musician, artist. Something every creative should do is start a podcast. Whether it's just one episode or an entire series of podcasts, start a podcast. It's a great learning curve. I used to co-host a podcast called Young Broke Musicians. It's still up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so if you want to have a little listen, check it out. I used to co-host that. It's great fun, a lot of work, but great experience, learned a lot. So we're going to be talking about podcast distribution and how you can actually get your podcast out there. Now, when I started to look at how to distribute the podcast, obviously the main thing is the idea of the podcast and the content, but also you need to get your podcast out there. You need to get it onto Spotify, you need to get it onto Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all those places. And I looked around at a lot of services, a lot of apps as well, and the one that I stumbled across was one called Anchor.fm. Now, I just want to make it very abundantly clear, this video is not sponsored by Anchor. I'm not being paid to talk about Anchor in this video. This is literally me as a former podcast host sharing my experience using Anchor. Just a bit of transparency there. So the question is, what is Anchor? Anchor is one of a few different podcasting apps on the market today, which is designed to be a one-stop shop for podcasting. In Anchor, you can do all of your recording, editing, hosting, and distribution kind of thing, all through their app, which is great. We'll talk about that later, or the dashboard online, which is Anchor.fm. So why should you use Anchor, and why did I choose to use Anchor? I think the main selling point for Anchor is it's free. There are lots of services which do charge to host your podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that jazz, but Anchor is free. There are pros and cons to it being free. We'll address the cons of Anchor later, but yeah, it's a great selling point, the fact that it's free, and you can upload as much or as little as you want because you don't really have to pay. You don't have to pay. And that is a great feature for people who are literally just starting and looking into getting into podcasting. With Anchor as well, you don't need too much gear. I think the main thing which puts most people off of podcasting is the gear. Now, obviously, I have got the Rodecaster Pro, which is what I'm recording with right now. I've got 4 Rode pod mics, which are great. I obviously don't host a podcast anymore, but I hire this equipment out and produce other people's podcasts, which is, I guess, a pro. But you don't actually need any of this to start a podcast. All you need is your phone. You don't need all of this. Let's be honest, you don't need this to get started. If it's just your first episode, you don't even know if you will enjoy podcasting. I'm pretty sure you will, but you don't need all of this to get started. All you need is your phone. It's that simple. And with the Anchor app, you can actually record your podcast straight into it. Obviously, you can set it on the table and just speak into it, or you could plug in the wired headphones that usually come with iPhones, not anymore, with the iPhone 12s and 12 Pros and Pro Maxes and all those ones. But if you have headphones that have a microphone on the wire, you can use that, and that is great audio quality. It's actually unbelievably good, like if you think about it. And you can record that straight into the Anchor app on your phone, or in the website dashboard Anchor.fm. You can record it into that, which is just great for people who are beginners and actually just looking into starting a podcast. That is quite reassuring that you don't actually need to buy too much gear. The app itself is pretty easy to use, and the whole experience of Anchor is very easy to use. Obviously, when you're starting something, it takes a little bit of setting up, filling all the details in and stuff. But once it's all set up, it's very easy to go, and very easy to actually post each episode of the podcast. You just type in the title and all your descriptions. You can type in episode number, series number. Obviously, you've got to disclose whether there's swear words in it. So you can do that as well, which is great. It's very easy to use. There's some things which aren't too easy to use with the app, and we'll address them at the end. But overall, it's a very good user experience using Anchor. Now, distribution, obviously the main point of Anchor, obviously you can record for it, but it also hosts your podcast for free, which is great. Anchor will send all of your episodes to the select platforms that you want. So if you just want it on Spotify, you can just have it on Spotify. If you want it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you can do that as well. Or you can send it to everywhere, like Overcast, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio and Amazon Alexa and all that sort of stuff. You can send it there. It's great. And, you know, if you make a mistake, it's very, very easy to fix. Once you have sent your podcast, it usually appears online within about 10 minutes, which is great. Really, really great. Another thing as well is there is no minimum criteria for making money through Anchor. As soon as you've started an episode, Anchor will actually give you a pitch to sponsor your podcast, like sponsoring and promoting Anchor itself. It gives you like a 30-second script and pitch and things you need to say, obviously, and you can actually make money from your podcast through Anchor. Now, I unfortunately couldn't earn any money through Anchor because it requires a US bank account, and obviously being here in Britain, I don't have a US bank account. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You do need a US bank account if you want to earn money through Anchor. They say UK sponsorship thing is coming soon. When that will be, I have no idea, but I'll keep you up to date. Now, there aren't many cons to using Anchor. I found the overall user experience incredible. I love it, and if I ever do another podcast again, I will be distributing on Anchor. It's a great service, highly recommend it, which is sort of the point of making this video for people who want to get into podcasting, and it's great fun. It's a lot to learn. It's a great experience, and I highly recommend doing it through Anchor. But there are a few cons to using Anchor, which I'll go over now. So obviously the main selling point for Anchor is the fact that it's free, but that's also a con because if it's free, they technically, there's obviously been a lot of debate about Anchor and how they do this, but Anchor technically own your content because it's free, which I guess is fair. You know, I can understand that. But I honestly don't mind too much. I mean, obviously there might be some big podcasts that will be like, yes, I need to own this. This is my content. I need to own this, but I'm not too fussed. I like Anchor, and you know, the fact that it's free is a great selling point for me. But for some people, that may not float their boat. And the last con, I honestly struggled to think of cons about using Anchor. I didn't really use it. I tried it at first, but the editing section on the app and the dashboard needs a bit of work. It's not the easiest to get around. It's a bit glitchy, so they need to work on that. Overall, I think the user experience of the app and the dashboard is great. You know, you get brilliant analytics. You can see whereabouts your podcast is being listened to in the world, from country to town to city, and everything. It's very, very in-depth. You can see when people drop off of your podcast. So if they drop off 30 minutes into an hour-long podcast, you can see that and you can learn from that, which is great. You can also see which platform your podcast is being streamed on the most. You can see gender, which genders are listening to your podcast, male, female, and other. So that's a great feature as well. You can see the ages of people listening to your podcast as well, which is great. The podcast I used to host was called Young Broke Musician, so I could actually look in and see, are there any young broke musicians listening to the podcast? There were. The age demographic was quite young, so that's great. I can see that the podcast was appealing to a younger audience, and that's a great advantage, really. I love that. So overall, my experience with using Anchor to host my podcast was great. Highly recommend it if you are just starting a podcast, or if you're an experienced podcaster. Highly recommend switching to Anchor. It's great. Again, I've not been paid or asked by Anchor to make this video. This is literally just me off my own back sharing my experience and hoping to give you the confidence to start your own podcast, because it's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I really, really do appreciate it. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, everyone. Peace and love. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.